they've come up with a nickname for you. I was like, okay, what's that? He was like, the lonely snow leopard. And at first I thought, wow, that's so cool. And I was like, why the lonely snow leopard? And he simply replied, well, because you've not yet been eaten by the wolves.
How do you deal with rejection?
It's painful. And I knew that eventually in the long run, consistency always wins. When certain things stress me out in civilization, back in society, I just remember those times that I have really struggled, those times where I've faced real shitty situations, where it is life and death or where it is truly uncomfortable. I just try to throw myself back there.
When you're by yourself, stalked by a pack of wolves, that's not a euphemism by any stretch of the imagination. That's literal.
Yeah.
It's not metaphorical, that's literal.
Yeah.
So when you're getting stalked by a pack, or they're over your shoulder, what the bloody hell is in your head?
At that point in time, part of me, I was quite awe-inspired by it because I could hear them all howling. So there was like something like, wow, I may never hear this again. Wolves howling on the other side of the mountain. And then it was only after one day I realized they're still howling and they're still the same amount of distance. I've covered about 25 miles and they're still same proximity away from me. Ooh. And then after 2 days, that's when I was like, they are now watching. They're looking, they're watching for, because it's very rare. Wolves won't really take risks and attack a human. They do, and they're known, and there's plenty of stories. But I was kind of like, they're not going to risk it. And there was me plus another guy at this point. This was on the Yangtze trek, not the Mongolia.
Okay.
And at this point, it was a little bit worrying because I remember the previous conversation that we had with locals, and the locals spoke Tibetan and they were trying to tell us something. And I didn't quite understand what they were saying, but my friend that I was with was filming it. I didn't know what they said, said thank you, waved off, goodbye. Fast forward 6 months, my production team in Beijing, because we were creating a documentary on the Yangtze for National Geographic, and they reached out and said, we've come across that piece of footage and you had no idea what he was saying. I was like, no. Well, he was saying that right down that valley where you're heading, only yesterday a local was killed by a pack of wolves. We didn't know. It's on that geo. We filmed it, but we didn't know what they were saying. So we were like, oh, bye. And then those next 2 days we were followed. Whether it was the same pack, we do not know.
Doesn't matter, does it? I mean, ultimately, goodness me.
Yeah.
And, well, I mean, 8 days, mate. 8 days of not talking to her, not seeing a soul. Are you having like a... And again, I'll say it again for the third time. You seem so normal. If that was me, I'd be all kinds of fucked up. I mean, I really would. But you seem, so are you having when you go for so long not talking to anybody, not seeing anybody, are you having when I'm by myself for a long time, I'll argue with myself. And I'm like, oh, you idiot. Oh, I'm not an idiot. Yeah. Are you having these, what's going on in your head? Like, how are you getting by each day?
Yeah, I guess, you're right. I guess You've
got to be so stoic, right? You've got to be so mentally determined and disciplined.
Yeah, you've got to wake up that morning with a clear vision and a clear plan. You've almost got to visualise you pitching up the tent that same evening. Whilst you're packing down the tent, you've got to picture how that day is going to go. It's going to be pleasant. You're not going to be followed by any wolves. You're not going to come across anything. And you're going to, in 12 hours from now, you're going to be pitching up that tent closer to that next goal. Because my goal was never the completion of Mongolia. My goal was always the next community or next city, because it was too big. I had to focus on all of the little checkpoints that I might come across in between.
The staircase analogy.
Even if it's a well, even if it's a confirmed water source, it's like, that I didn't want to look too far ahead because then that would scare me. And so I didn't look at it and think this section is going to be arid and I might not come across a single person. But I guess I would wake up, I would try to talk to myself, I would sort of play music. And you're right, I couldn't afford the satellite phone. So it was only text only. And I think I had 3 texts to send per day, but some days I wouldn't. I remember 8 days. And whilst I would get a little bit paranoid to think that, fucking hell, I've got no one with me. There's no brotherhood where I can talk to other people. There's no one helping to keep me motivated. There's no one helping with the decision making. Like, I'm following these little tracks, and sometimes it would split off to 5. My GPS failed me, so I was down to map and compass. And that track is my lifeline. It's that'll lead me to my next water source. So I have to be bang on, has to be. A lot of people think you must get bored out there all the time, but I'm being hit by different storms. There's different wildlife. There's the navigation, you know. I'm constantly, there are days definitely with that. It's like monotonous and it's really boring. But a lot of the time I'm always planning ahead. I'm always thinking what could go wrong, what could happen, or the next challenge, how I can overcome, because I know that this big river's coming up or that's going to happen. And I guess that's what keeps me preoccupied. But I'm also thinking, I doubt I will ever experience this again, where I can cover such great distance over land and not come across a single human.
Enjoying the experience.
And so I'm trying to soak it up and trying to listen. And I remember at that time saying to my logistics manager before I set off, he was a local Mongolian, and I said to him, can you imagine how quiet it's going to be in the Gobi Desert when I'm at that period where there's just nothingness? And he sniggered and said, there's no such thing as silence. And I was like, what do you mean there's no such thing as silence? There's silence rooms, there's all sorts. And he was like, you'll realise, he says, I'm not going to tell you. If you hit that point, you'll understand what I mean, and you'll try to figure it out yourself. I was like, okay. Anyway, forgot about that conversation. And during those 8 days, when I was completely out there was no insects, there was no breeze, as I mentioned. There was no sand dunes, which caused the noise sometimes of shifting sands. There was none of that. There was nothing, complete stillness. And I remember one day there was this slightly faint, almost like a humming noise, and I could hear it. And I was like, the fuck is that? I've never heard that before. And I thought maybe it's air potentially leaking out of my water container. So I ditched my trail. I walked off 100 meters or so, and I could still hear it. And there was nothing on me. There was nothing. And I was just like, no way, the penny dropped. And I was like, when you're at the point of silence, as long as you're living and your body's ticking over, you'll always hear your body ticking over. I was like, no way, is that what he meant? And I remember I got back, I was like, did you mean that? He was like, yeah. When you're at the point of silence, you'll realise that there's no such thing as silence as long as you're alive.
This podcast is brought to you in partnership with Ogogo Fitness. Ogogo Fitness is my brand new fitness app I'll be launching really, really soon. I've created this app so I truly want to help people. I believe everybody should have the right to exercise and be fit and be healthy. I brought this to the world to promote physical health and mental health. I've designed 60 preset 7-minute workouts ranging in difficulty from round 1, which is pretty easy, to round 12, which is really, really challenging. As well as that, I've got my personal workout builder. I've created 50 different exercises, and you have the choice to create your own playlist from the 50 different workouts, which gives you an option of over 80 million combinations of workouts. So from your GoGo Fitness app, you can literally choose from millions and millions and millions of workouts personalized for you and what you're training for. So head over to agogofitness.com, register your interest, and be the first to know when Ogogo Fitness is launching.
I've never hit it before that. I've never hit it since then. It was that one time in the Gobi Desert of going 8 days without seeing anyone.
And I guess being on your own and so secluded, you become so in tuned and so connected to your own self.
Yeah.
And that's why you could hear that noise.
Yeah. And I think all of your senses at that point are heightened.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
You're in survival. I always say it takes 2 weeks for you to break into your wild side. And I've experienced this time and time again with all of my expeditions and adventures. It takes 2 weeks, you're uncomfortable. If it's wet, you don't like it. If it's dirty, you want to keep clean. If it's noisy outside, you can't sleep. If there's insects, you don't like it, And eventually you become comfortable with the uncomfortable. You don't give a fuck about insects. Even the wolves, to be honest, in the distance, you get to a point where, no, you just turn wild, man. And I think we all have it. You let your beard grow out. You don't give a fuck. You'll do anything, And that's cool to see. And I think it's only having faced that now a certain amount of times that when certain things stress me out in civilization, back in society, I just remember those times that I have really struggled, those times where I've faced real shitty situations, where it is life and death or where it is truly uncomfortable. I just try to throw myself back there, and that really helps me to stay calm.
You mentioned something earlier it's like those moments, right? Those moments of being scared, anything, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm saying it in a different way. I'm 34 at the moment, and I've lived one hell of a life. I could die tomorrow, and I'll be pissed off that I'm dead.
Yes.
But I'll be looking back and I've crammed in so much. Other than
You've achieved a lot, for sure. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And I've just done a lot of shit. I've done a lot of cool stuff. Other than haven't become a father yet, which hopefully in the future for me, I've done so much. And I've lived a really rich life. And I've packed a lot in 34 years. And I don't really think life is like how long you live. I think it's all those moments that you feel, good, bad, and indifferent. It's those moments when you feel, it's the walking out to your Olympic Games and being petrified and scared but excited. That moment is I did a TV show recently and I had to run down a dam, and I'm standing there looking down 100 meters down the dam, and I'm going, this is terrifying, and doing it anyway. It's those moments that make life worth living.
Yeah, man.
And it's the same as yourself. You've done so much in such a short space of time. It's like those moments, like, and you mentioned something a minute ago, and I think you just want to say, like, you've done so much in your life, and I know you've experienced those moments, and what just wow. I was going to say it earlier, but we went on. So congratulations on that. And you mentioned something a minute ago, like, you mentioned something like when you're on death's door, when you think you're going to die, this whole new side of you comes out, and you're able to like make decisions better. Or you mentioned it when you had the ability to get up from underneath your trailer and crack on. But only in those moments when you feel like you're about to die can you kind of like harness those things. How does people listening to this, they're not going to go on these mad adventures and expeditions and almost die. How does one, in your opinion, or maybe they can't, in your opinion, how does one channel and harness that in everyday life rather than only when they're potentially going to die to maximize their own life?
I think it's picturing where they're heading if they keep doing what they're currently doing without pushing. So, for example, that time in the Gobi Desert, I actually came across camel carcasses in the desert, like camels just dead, just there, left. And when I was under...
Like in Lion King when they're dead elephants and stuff, and they like make a little house within it. Yeah, crazy.
That's it. It's, and I remember just picturing what it would be like if I continued to rest under my trailer and I didn't do one of the two options that I had, which was either the evacuation or the keep walking. And then it was only when I realized I don't have the evacuation, I have to keep walking. If I don't keep getting up and doing this, what's the alternative? And then I just pictured myself as a carcass. People just driving by my body, maybe taking some stuff from my trailer, carrying on horseback, I don't know. And so I think for those people who sort of aren't getting up and pushing or have those lazy days, if you keep having those lazy days or if you keep overthinking and overanalyzing, fast forward 5 years into your future, add all of those days up, where are you going to be compared to if you get up now and you overcome your fear, or you get out your comfort zone, or you act? It could be stuff like stop snoozing on the alarm clock. It could be like stop having cheat days where you say, I'm not going to train today, I'll train harder tomorrow instead. You know? Like, that's fine to some extent, but if you continue doing that and you add all of that up, where are you in 5 years from now? Visualize yourself compared to visualizing yourself if you do it today, if you do get up, if you do train, if you do achieve whatever you want to set out to achieve on that specific day. And I think that's what I do. I visualize where I want to be in 5 years or a year from now. And to break it down smaller, I visualize where I wanted to be 4 days from now. And it wasn't a carcass in the desert. It was in that community, ready, building up my strength to push on and complete the mission in hand.
Rejection. I've heard you say you've suffered lots of rejection, thousands of rejections.
Yes.
How do you deal with rejection?
Oh, rejection is so infuriating. It is, it's painful. I think there's two sides of it. There is a side where I do let it get to me. I do get annoyed by it. I get frustrated. You know, I think, fuck, I've worked so hard. I've achieved so much to try to get this over the line, yet I still fail to get it over the line. And when I say that, Mongolia, I filmed it. It didn't air. There was no TV. There's no book. It's a world first, and there's none of that. Madagascar, failed again. No book, no TV.
You succeeded in the
expeditions. Yeah, I achieved firsts. But there came a point where after that Mongolia trip, I realized I can actually turn my passion into my career. People are doing it. And it's hard to find things that haven't been done in this day and age. Everest has been climbed, biggest river's been walked, this has been mapped, that's been done. A lot of stuff has been done. So to find a first is very difficult to do. That's why people are going after speed records, longest to do this, quickest to do that, because everyone's done something. And then I found that first and I was like, wow, that's a rarity. Maybe I can do stuff off the back of it. And there was certain stuff happening. I did a TEDx talk. I did a UK theatre tour. I was like, okay, there's ways to do this. But I think that first year, I earned $5,000 in 12 months. So I had to still live with my parents. I was still living with my parents. Now we're talking 24, 25. The Madagascar, I thought maybe things will change. Things didn't change. I was still living with my parents. I was still struggling. TV was saying, no, you're too similar to Bear Grylls or this guy or that guy. And I was like, fucking hell. Okay, what can I do that's different? How can I break this? In the meantime, it's not just TV. It's book agencies that will decline you. It's magazines, it's radio, and I think it, as a whole, up to this day, it's for sure over 2,000 rejections. Like definitely 2,000. This is 10 years in the making, 3 world first records. There's a lot of people that I reach out, and I do all the groundwork myself. It's just me and my dad that work with each other, and a lot of the time I've had no agencies. It's just me emailing. It was me who emailed Joe Rogan, and I got onto the Joe Rogan podcast. I sent him 14 different emails. I'm always grinding and grafting and finding a way to make shit happen, despite receiving all of these rejections. And with the Yangtze River, my last and final sort of big world first record so far, it was a case of, right, this next one, it needs to be fucking big. It needs to make waves. And I need to finally, get over those rejections.
But how do you get over it? But how? Like, we all suffer. We're going to talk about the Yangtze River because these stories are unbelievable in the sense that they sound made up because they're so unbelievable. That's how fantastic your story is. But like, I want people to learn from this. We can't learn from. We're not going to go and do the things you do. We can't do the things you do, but we can all get knocked down.
Yeah,
we do all get knocked down. We do all suffer rejection. How do we, us mere mortals who can't walk the Gobi Desert? How do we get up from a rejection?
I think you stay doing you stay focused on what you're trying to achieve. You never let anyone's no or disbelief in you phase what you're trying to achieve. That was one thing that I did, despite all the rejection. And when I say rejections, they weren't just no. They were either you're Welsh or you're white or you're straight. We're talking like crazy rejections.
Things you can't change.
Things I can't change. Yeah. Forget about the world firsts, the stories, the experiences, because you're this or you're not quite that, or because this person's similar or that story's similar. It's a no. Which in the boxing world, for example, it's like giving only Tyson Fury a platform and then declining Anthony Joshua, Canelo, Usyk, Froch, all of these other boxers who are big names, yourself as well. It's like declining all of them and saying, no, we've already got this one boxer and one boxer will do. That's what it's like. It's like no one other than Bear Grylls can do an adventure and get TV off the back of it. It's just insane. And so I was like, there's going to be a way. There's a way that I can really sort of maximize this and keep going. And I think it's staying dogged. It's building up your track habits. It's building up your experience. It's getting better. I think that's the one key thing. After Mongolia, of course, I'm going to face rejections. You've only done one world, although it's a world record, you've only done one world record. You're only 24. You don't have a book yet. You've only done 3 talks. Do 10 talks. Do two records. Do bigger, do better. And keep, but also following your passion. So I didn't continue doing this because I wanted to set an example or prove a point. I did it because I loved what I was doing, and I knew that eventually, in the long run, consistency always wins. And I had to tell myself that every day. And it's only now I'm really starting to see the benefits. Now it's shifted, and I'm at a different place. I'll still face difficult times and rejection, but in no way near as difficult as it was with Mongolia, with Madagascar, with the Yangtze. Even with the Yangtze, I was still declined by so many brands, radio, brands didn't even want to associate because they thought I could die out there.
Cool.
Even with the track habit of achieving records in the desert, in the jungle. It's so I think it's remaining fucking dogged, staying disciplined, going at it no matter what, and going back to what I first said with Mongolia is two things. Just because no one's found a way to do something doesn't mean it can't be done. And the second is just because no one else sees it for you doesn't mean you can't see it for yourself.
Yeah.
So I always saw it for myself, and I always had that internal fire. And so instead of receiving a rejection and then feeling sorry for myself and coming up with a different plan, because sometimes I did think, maybe I need to go back to scuba diving or the fish and chip shop or whatever. But there was another side of me who was just, get that wild man from the Gobi Desert back inside. He wouldn't stop and rest under the trailer and bitch and whine. He would get up and he would keep fucking going until he achieved what he set out to. So I think you've got to fucking have that,
Mate, I want to get up and put my head to a wall. Kat, should we just go and do something crazy? I'm so pumped right now.
Love it.
Honestly, mate, like the wild, and we've all got a wild man or wild woman inside us, do you think?
Yeah, 100%.
We've just got to push ourselves to find it.
Yeah, it's covered in a layer of dust. I think we've all got what it takes. It's just sometimes you're not pushed to that capacity where you realise you've got what it takes, But you have, and I hope no one is pushed to that level. But if they are, don't forget that you've got it.
Nice to know that he or she's in there somewhere, lying dormant, waiting to be awoken.
Yeah.
Oof, mate, let's talk about some of your challenges, right? Some of your expeditions you've done so much. This is so much. We could have cut this podcast an hour ago, mate, and I'd have left feeling so happy because you've sprinkled so many nuggets and inspiration. Like, this is unbelievable. And what I like about your story is so relatable. In the sense that, no, we can't know how hot it is. When you say it was 40 degrees in the Gobi Desert and you're covered then, I've seen you with pictures with the sunglasses on and the mask across your face, the scarf across your face.
Yeah.
We can't experience that. When you say oh, it's really hot, it's a seek refuge underneath the trailer, we can appreciate how hot it is. We've all been hot before, but we can't appreciate the heat, the true heat. We can't appreciate the silence. But what I love about your story is it's so relatable that we can all understand what you're saying, and we can all take the staircase, the 100 meters rest, 100. We can all learn from that, and it's so relatable, and it's just you're so giving and kind for sharing your experiences for the betterment of us, and I. On behalf of the world, I'm the spokesman for the world from saying thank you so much, man. I really do appreciate that. No, and there's still so much to talk about. So you've Mongolia. You were dubbed by the locals as the lonely snow leopard.
Yeah.
That's so cool, man.
It's cool.
That's cool.
It?
Have you got a tattoo of that?
I haven't. It did cross my mind at the end of it, but I was like, don't do it. Don't do it.
That's such a cool name. The lonely snow leopard. I love that. I saw it on your Wikipedia page and thought, that's the coolest moniker ever given. And authentic as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and that came, so, with that, as I said, I didn't have any money. I didn't PR this. There was no marketing team. There was no agency. There was nothing. It was just the capital city, Ulaanbaatar in Mongolia. They got word from my logistics manager, and that kept spreading. There was more news articles, more TV pieces. And he called me, I think it was my last week of the Altai Mountains. I had signal. I made it to like a small town. And he said, the locals are aware of what you're doing. I was like, no way, really? And he's like, yeah, they've come up with a nickname for you. I was like, okay, what's that? He was like, the lonely snow leopard. And at first I thought, wow, that's so cool. And I was like, why the lonely snow leopard? And he simply replied, well, because you've not yet been eaten by the wolves. And the snow leopard is the only other predator to be left alone by the wolves.
Oh, that's even cooler now.
Yeah, right.
I just thought it because you're white. And I just thought it and you're on your own all the time. That's so cool.
No, it was because the snow leopard is the only other predator that the wolves don't go after.
Yeah.
But I was scared because I was still in the Altai Mountains. So I was like, don't jinx me. I've still got to get out of the mountains, That's, so yeah, it was, cool name for sure.
Madagascar.
Madagascar, this was
What was that about, mate?
This was brutal.
The jungle.
It took 155 days to cross the island of Madagascar.
So how long? So in terms of time, how long was Cambodia? Mongolia. Sorry,
Mongolia was 78 days, 1,500 miles. Now Madagascar is only 100 miles longer, it was 1,600 miles, but almost double the duration, being 155 days.
Because you're in the jungle and obstacles and challenges.
Yeah, so this was a world first to walk the entire length of the island via the interior, where a lot of it is forest, is jungle, but also summiting the 8 highest mountains along the way. You've got this mountain ridge that almost lies central east of the island, almost the entire length. So the idea was to stay on that mountain ridge from the most southern tip to the most northern tip.
And how do people know that you don't cheat? How can you just go, let's say you've gone over the first 5 mountains and think,
Yeah.
this one's a bit big, I'll just go out the side.
Yeah.
How do people know you don't do that?
So you've got a tracking device. And so this tracking device sends off a little ping every 5 minutes to the satellite. And this little beacon has your altitude, your time, your duration, but most importantly, your speed. And so if I, for example, jumped on the back end of a bicycle, you've been tagged.
Yeah.
It's got you. And it's funny, we're cutting ahead here, but with the Yangtze, it was a whole year, 352 days. It took Guinness Book of Records over 2.5 months to verify, because they went through every 5 minutes, 24/7 for 352 days. Every beacon sent to make sure that my speed wasn't. And they also check any tributaries that I cross or the river. I can't use the flow of the river, otherwise I'd be disqualified. And if
Can't jump in the river and let the river take you
it
down.
can't, and if it flows, let's say 50 meters, I have to walk back on myself to cover that distance that the flow of the river took me. So I'd have to walk back on myself only a little bit, 100 meters. So the beacon, ping, it wouldn't be 100, it'd be 5 minutes effectively, because it pings off every 5 minutes. And that's how. Which is good, which is really good. I wanted that.
Yeah, because everyone knows you've done exactly
Yeah, I wanted that, but I didn't need it. I'm just so ruthless with myself.
Of course.
I think even without the device, I would have cheated myself, and I wouldn't been able to live knowing I fucking didn't do that.
You'd always know, wouldn't you?
I will, and that's the worst. That, I feel, is the worst. If you cheat yourself, I don't know, it just doesn't, I wouldn't sit here comfortably with the achievements and experience had I not have done it legitimately, you know?
Yeah. My old boxing coach, Barry O'Connell, who's a legend, used to say,
Nice.
integrity is doing the right thing when nobody's watching.
Love it. Yeah, absolutely bang on. Spot on. Yeah. Yeah.
So you did Madagascar. Yeah, tell me about that, because that's some
Yeah.
stories. And then, so just so people know that you did Mongolia,
Yep.
Madagascar, the Yangtze River,
Yep.
which is the big long one, and you've done a 4th one as well that we'll come on to at the end.
Yes.
And then we'll round up with some more life lessons from the great Ash Dykes, and then, mate, hopefully have you back on numerous
Definitely.
times, because this has been one of the most enjoyable, I don't know how long we've been talking for, but enjoyable last hour and a bit of my entire life.
Oh,
I'm really
appreciate that. It's
sitting
been
here.
really great fun.
I've been, and there's still so much more to talk about, but I'm just sitting there ready to go and, as I said, put my head through a wall or go and do something unbelievable, because this is exactly why I wanted to do this podcast. I've still got remnants of bitterness and frustration from my own boxing career that I'm trying to shed. And it's hearing these stories, other people's great comeback stories, enables me to kind of shed that, because I know that's not good for me, my heart, my soul, and my life.
Yeah.
And yeah, this is amazing for me, mate. So selfishly, thank you so much.
Yeah, love it. No, appreciate that. And yeah, Madagascar gets even crazier, for sure.
Go.
155 days, 1,600 miles. And with this, honestly, out of the 155-day trek, I don't think there was a day where it was just a pleasant day's trek. There was, whilst Mongolia was very mentally draining, lots of fear, held a lot of diet. I was scared. I won't act like the hero and say, yeah, smashed it. I was fucking shit scared. Very scared of the Mongolia trek.
But I think that's normal. No.
Yeah.
It would be weird not to be scared.
Yeah,
The
I
fact,
think so.
And what I like about you as well, Ash, is like, you openly admit, I was scared, but I did it anyway. That's what courage is.
Yeah, it's true, yeah. And with Madagascar, that was more physical. It was, just to breeze over some challenges, I had to avoid the bandits of South Madagascar. I was held up at gunpoint by the military. I contracted the deadliest strain of malaria and reached a nearby city a few hours before potentially slipping into a coma. I was bitten by spiders, which then started to get infected. I had my blood sucked by leeches, and most nights at the 2-3 weeks up at jungles up north, I'd get in my tent, take off my shirt, and I'd have to pull 6-7 leeches and flick them out the tent. I had to cross crocodile-infested rivers, especially up north. I almost lost my...
Okay, so there's so much.
There's lots, isn't there?
So
that's why out of all of the days, there just wasn't a day where it's like, that was a decent hike.
So let's just focus on one part of that because there's so much.
It's a lot.
So there's a river, and you say you got to get across the river to get up there to do the next mountain with the next thing. But you got to get across this river, and you know full well there's a crocodile in there swimming around waiting for a little Welshman, the 7th coolest Welshman in the world, to jump in the water, and he wants to snap your legs off. Thought process, mindset, what is going through your head right there, and how do you just do it?
Well, I think what's even creepier than that is you don't know if there's crocodiles in those rivers or not.
Oh.
You know, because you can't see it. The rivers are murky. And so there could be a dozen.
Right there.
Or there might not be any. Yeah. Do you risk, like there's crocodiles in Madagascar, but in the specific river that you're looking to cross, are there any in that river right now? Or are there not? Do you risk it or do you not? And so there's 3 ways to cross crocodile-infested rivers. You either cross where there's locals, because they know where the crocodile's territory is. They cross it every day. It's no big deal. That's their home. If there's no locals and you're in the wild, like I was, you cross where there's white water or rapids, because the crocs don't like to have their territory near fast-flowing water. And the third option is you cross by building yourself a raft using bamboo and bamboo leaves. That takes 3 to 4 hours just to get over this 50-metre, sometimes smaller, river to the other side. And there were a few occasions where we had to take that third option.
Who's we? You often say we. Who's we?
Yeah, so with Madagascar, the beauty with this wasn't solo and unsupported. I had a guide for the most southern section who knows the south, a guide for the middle section, and then a guide who knows the jungles up north. So 3 separate guides on these different occasions. And that was the beauty. You know, with Mongolia, as much as I loved it and I loved the locals, they were incredible, super hospitable. There were times that I didn't come across locals for days. And when I did, there was smiling, there was gestures. They let me stay in their gur. There was writing in the sand, drawn pictures, all
What's
of that.
A gur?
A gur, sorry, is their white felt tent, just living out there in the wild in their white felt tent.
Okay.
And I thought, you know, on my next trip being in Madagascar, I hope to come across more locals. That's why I started traveling in the first place. I love meeting new people, understanding the local culture, their way, their traditions. And I also thought it would be nice to do it with a guide who was able to translate so that I get a good understanding of the people without just smiling and writing in sand and, you know. And so that was the beauty of Madagascar. I really got to know the locals, you know, because I had the guides with me. And those guides turned into my Malagasy brothers. They went through thick and thin. I still keep in touch with them to this day.
So as you go through something so intimate with somebody, you're bound to just get close to them. And
yeah, because you were kind of reliant. You know, when we put together the raft, your life is in their hands really, because you're doing your knots, making sure it's strapped together. They're doing theirs. They don't need to check mine. I shouldn't need to check theirs. So, you know, you're all like that trust and loyalty goes into each other's hands, and you have to. I always say, and I think this is good for teamwork, and you'll probably know this as well. But, you know, when I was out there, especially up north, when I was in the jungle, this was potentially the most difficult, other than the malaria down south. But the jungle, it was machete in hand. We were hacking through the jungle. We would go over 16 hours of hacking, and we would cover 1 mile if we were lucky, 2 miles. We were hunting, we were gathering, but there were 4 of us. There was me and my guide, Max, and then there was also this photographer called Suzanne. She was hardcore. She was like a Lara Croft. She joined me for a few weeks, and she brought a porter named Leva, who was Malagasy. And so there was 4 of us, and what I noticed that was different from my solo trip in Mongolia to Madagascar is on my solo trip, it was just me and my mindset, and I'm a positive guy. I can wake up, shit could be against me. I could be against all of the odds. I would still be smiling, thinking, fucking hell, I've got this. Whereas now, other people's lives are on my expedition. Their thoughts, their moods, their emotions, sometimes they're sensitive, sometimes they're hungry, sometimes they're thirsty. Sometimes they're bleeding, then they're crying. Sometimes they're, you know, losing hope because we're stuck, sometimes lost in the jungle. And it was at that point I had to really take sort of leadership role. But not only that, I found that we were 4 separate individual beating hearts with our own emotions, our own worries and doubts. And by the time our jungle experience came to an end, 3-4 weeks later, by the time we had said bye, what I noticed is we had all formed as one power beating heart through that. We became so in sync with one another that it was hard not to see them as my brother and sister out there, because we went through thick and thin. We saw each other at our most vulnerable points. We saw each other what it's like to be suffering with dehydration from starvation, from deep sleep deprivation. Suzanne, bless her, fell so many times, bamboo shards stabbing her, leeches on her face. She was dripping with blood. And, she got through that, and she got through probably a changed person. And it was that, wow, you know what, it was just a powerful message that I think we all have to, when you're working as a team, I think it's the lowest of lows that can build the strongest of bonds,
Yeah.
And we really did face that out there.
When you're with a team or by yourself, when you're telling your unbelievable story, obviously I'm thinking about my story, and I'm sure people listening to this will be thinking about their stories.
Yeah.
Because as I said earlier, you're telling your story, sharing it with us, so the betterment for our lives. I'm thinking about my Olympic journey, my professional boxing career journey, when I've suffered injuries, and there's been times where I was very positive. I'm definitely going to box again once I hurt my eye. I'm definitely going to box, and but there were times I'd have a little cry. And I'm not really a crier, but it meant so much to me that I'd have a little cry, and I think, but what if I don't? I might not. And those doubts would creep in, and when they'd live in my head for a bit, then it's my job to kick them out. Did you ever, again, on your own or with the team, ever cry and be sad and think, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know how I'm going to do this?
There was a time in Mongolia when my lips were all blistered and chapped because I was at high altitude and it was cold, and I felt really vulnerable, and I was only 3 weeks into this trip, and it was freezing, -15, -20, snow blizzards. And I remember my lips became so chapped that in the morning I would need to pull them apart to open them, and then I would drink from my ration pack, which was porridge. And I remember there'd be this slurp of pus and blood into my ration pack. I was just really dry, blisters, toenails falling off. And I remember I came across this community. It was a Kazakh family, and they invited me in. They saw me from a distance. I didn't even clock them, but they saw me far from a distance trying to set up my tent. I was battling the wind, and there wasn't anyone there to help me set it. I was just trying my best to set it up. And this guy came down fully dressed, fully cloaked, black everything, black boots, gloves, hat. It was freezing. And he said, you pointed to his heart, and because he couldn't speak English, we couldn't communicate. And I got what he said, and then I rocked up, followed him. He helped me with the trailer. It was a few hundred meters away, and I just remember being inside, and I remember they had nothing. I remember being cold, and the lady had this kettle and a tin tub, and I jumped in this tin tub because she said jump in, with my boxer shorts on, crouched down, and she's above me pouring this warm, sort of lukewarm water. And you've got this small daughter, 2 sons, this old lady who's the mum and I'm just washing and looking out, hearing the howling. And I think it was only the next day where I left and I was back in the extremes. They were so incredibly warm and welcoming, very hospitable. I left and I was back in the elements. I was blasted. My lips were still bleeding. And it was at the point I didn't realize how many days or weeks I would go again before I come across another family like that. And I didn't even know if I would make it to the next community. And I remember the wind pelting me and I just looking out to wild wilderness. And I felt so fucking vulnerable with my walking poles, walking up the mountain. And I think it's at that time it got to me. And I had a little cry walking up that mountain thinking, what a nice family, what amazing locals. Just the warmness of it. And, I was drinking Kazakh chai, the food that they gave me. And then I was now back. I had to switch that soft side off.
The wild,
because now I needed that wild side again. But it took a bit to balance that, especially the first few weeks, when you receive such. And you just don't know, am I going to be attacked by wolves? Am I going to make this journey?
They're the last people you're ever going to see.
Yeah, and it's those little things that, you know, I come back, and this again is a good message for the audience. I come back to civilization and I just realize how good we've got it, how convenient everything is, you know, and to see them struggle up there, how they take a bath, how they have to make the fire to boil the water. We just flick on a kettle. We can take a shower, flick on the kettle, bang, bang, it's all done. Toast, put stuff in the oven. And they're just out here grinding their living. So it's hard to come off an expedition and be arrogant once you've been so humbled. You think you're hard going through those extremes. They live there, you know? So that's always special coming back. They're there still to this day in those hardcore elements. You might be hardcore walking through that, you know, whilst the wolves are stalking you, but they live there. They do this every single day. So you come back with a new appreciation of life. And I guess when I was out there in the mountains, I really appreciated even that, what they had was classed as convenient and comfortable, even though it's hardcore. But compared to what I was facing, just shelter, having a roof, warm water, you know, cup of tea, the basics in life, and I was happy.
I mean, that's so kind. You could have been a raging lunatic. You could have been a machete-wielding lunatic. And they let you into their house, and they fed you, and they clothed you, they let you take a bath in a little tin bath, and vice versa. They could have been cannibals. Yeah. They could have been lunatic. And it's just nice hearing, like, you're never going to, I bet you don't know their names, or you can go, it's just so nice. People helping each other. Yeah. Mate,
big faith in humanity. I've got a lot of trust. Sometimes that has come back to bite me.
Yeah.
But the more times that it'll come back to bite me is in the corporate world, when I'm back here in society, rather than out there in the wild, when you think you should be on edge more, when you think you should fear people more. It's actually sometimes coming back to the big cities.
That's really interesting, isn't it?
Right.
A lot of lessons in that.
Yeah.
China. Talk about China.
Yes. This one was a big one.
The other ones okay, walk to the park, but this one, wow, man.
Yeah, this was a 4,000-mile trip. This was the longest river to run through a single country, third longest in the world. There's not much difference between the Amazon, the Nile, and the Yangtze, except people are really unfamiliar with the Yangtze River. And when they think of China, they think of the cities, Chongqing, Beijing, Chengdu, Shanghai, Hong Kong. You know, they don't think the far west, Qinghai, Sichuan, Tibet, wild places where you've still got bears, where you've still got wolves.
So when you say wild, explain bears and wolves and primitive.
Yeah, wintertime it can drop to minus 40 degrees Celsius. You've got snow blizzards. You think of the source of the Yangtze River, you don't think same altitude as Mount Everest Base Camp.
Is it really?
It's over 5,100 meters.
I went to a little segue.
Yeah.
A box in Beijing in 2007, November, in the Olympic test event.
Right.
And in my head, China was hot.
Okay, yeah.
This is before, like, Google was so, like, on your phone and easy to, like...
Yeah.
And I took all shorts and T-shirts and vests. I got there freezing cold.
Yeah,
I was like, this could be cold as well. I don't know why I thought it was hot.
Yeah.
So, minus, I mean, it's a really shit story, but yeah.
So you're right, though. Yeah, you think of China. You think of heat, humidity. Yeah, no, it can drop. Beijing itself, that can drop, I could be wrong, but I think minus 10, minus 15 it drops to, maybe even more so. And it's that dry cold, so it's painful, you know.
Cold.
But
yeah, 4,000 miles.
4,000 miles. It took 352 days.
Took 4,000 miles. I'm just seeing in my head a giant 4,000. So just so I can work out just how vast of a distance that is, what is 4,000 miles?
I think 4,000 miles would be from London to Istanbul, Turkey.
Wow.
So easily the whole length of Europe.
Yeah.
4,000 miles is, it's a big distance.
So on an airplane, that's like 4.5 hours.
Yes.
Turkey,
yeah.
So an airplanes go real fast.
Yeah.
A man walking across dangerous terrain, not quite so fast.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I remember actually arriving into China, into Beijing, getting set up with my production team.
So just you fly into Beijing, right?
Yeah.
Fly in. Then when you get off the airplane, because I always hear about like, oh, do this, but just to get there. So you're like, oh, bye, mom, bye, dad. I'm off. See you later. I might never see you again. You obviously kiss your parents goodbye, like you may never see him again, right? Which is a very realistic possibility.
Yes and no.
Or you're quite matter of fact about it.
Yeah, I am. Again, it's not like my first adventures where I was really reckless. Now it's, although there are uncertainties and anything can happen, it's all about looking at every single possible obstacle, every single challenge that you might face, even the most ridiculous ones that are really unlikely to happen. I picture it happening and I study, I research how I can possibly overcome that challenge. So I look at all angles, up to a point that even Madagascar, when I caught malaria, it was no surprise. Even though I tried to prevent it and I was taking my anti-malarial, it was a case of I didn't freak. I didn't go into shock, into that shock of capture, fight or flight. And I really dealt with it calmly, and maybe that's why I was able to survive or continue hiking with the deadliest strain of malaria. So everything that I look at from a point of, I knew this could happen. It hasn't come as a shock where now I'm going to panic. It's happened, and I now need to overcome it. But then my mum and dad, they did fly out to Beijing. You know, there was a big sort of expensive, luxurious event to launch the expedition in China.
Who pays for that?
This was a sponsor, a Switzerland sponsor, and a water-to-go filtration bottle sponsor that combined forces, and they threw it. It was sort of, it was a big event. It was on a cruise going along Pudong River in Shanghai with the skyline behind us. And I remember there were some logistics team there, and they were talking about all the dangers and how people go missing in the West due to sensitivities, political reasons, about military base camps, about they'll find any excuse. Oh, mum disappeared in the mountains when you're locked up in prison. And they were saying that in front of my parents. And my dad's part of the business. He's part of the whole limited company. I work closely with him. And my mum is part of it too, in terms of, she's been there whilst me and my dad have always been grinding, looking into these expeditions and the business side of it as well. But she doesn't necessarily need to hear all of the drastic things that can go wrong. She's already going to have 352 sleepless nights when I'm out there walking the 4,000-mile route. And so that did draw her to tears, and that wasn't nice to see. They didn't need to address all of those dangers. But I knew all of those dangers. I don't think she realised I knew. And I remember, one of my proudest moments, I don't think I've mentioned this on a podcast, but one of my proudest moments actually was when she was crying, and she's a hard mum. She's pretty hardcore. I remember I hugged her, and I was there saying I was saying bye. She was about to board the plane, go back to the UK, and I was about to board the plane and head towards the source of the Yangtze, which was already quite a mission to do. And I whispered, I said, look, despite all of these people saying everything that can go wrong, even the locals and the logistics and, the mishaps and the military base camps, I said, it's not something I haven't heard. I know everything that they're saying. It's old news. I said, and I was told all of this and then some with Madagascar. I was told all of the same and then some again with Mongolia. I said, I promise you, I will cross the finish line here in the same city, Shanghai. I'll be hugging you at the finish line, and I will whisper in your ear then, I told you I would do it. And fast forward a year later, I was where the Yangtze River pours into the East China Sea in Shanghai, hugged my mum. It's actually caught on camera as well. And I whispered it in her ear. I told you I would do it. That was the best. Because I had overcome all of those trials and tribulations. I had had 10 of 16 different members that joined for different segments of the trip be evacuated, be abandoned, scared of the wildlife, altitude sickness on oxygen tanks, emergency flown back down to the city of Beijing, back down to lower altitude, and I was still grinding along this Yangtze River bank until all the way to the end, made it alive, made it safe, and there wasn't any new challenge that happened that I didn't anticipate, So I put down to, a lot of people will say a lot of luck. Maybe there's an element of that, but I do say it's really good planning,
100%,
really good training.
And also, you make your own luck.
Yeah, it's true.
You make your own luck.
Yeah, yeah.
Your mum is obviously so proud of you.
Yeah.
As is your dad. As am mine. I've known you for 2 hours. Well, so when you're away for a year.
Yes.
Right? So a year on your own, right? Basically, obviously, you got some people with you and stuff. And
Yeah, I've got people, and then the first sort of 6 months of the expedition is very wild, very extreme. It got to a point where people were joining me, and their lives were at stake. That I got rid of them, and I put a whole close down on the trip. And it's interesting because I've been doing these expeditions back to back. There's only ever been 1 to 2 years. I kind of forget how much I've learned and experienced. And it's like yourself, it's like an athlete. It's like you remember the journey, but you don't really understand how good you've gotten until a beginner joins you. And then you're like, oh shit, yeah, you have progressed immensely as a boxer,
because in boxing, when you get in any sport, especially boxing, you get punched in the face.
Yeah.
When you get better, you spar and you fight people that are better than you. So you're still getting punched in the head the same amount of times when you're 12. But when you spar or fight someone who's better, like not as good as you're like, oh no, I am good.
Yeah. Yeah, it's exactly like that. So that was a reckless lesson that I learned, to just stop allowing anyone to join me. When I thought it was safe, like my UK photographer flew out from the UK to China, all the way to then West China. I think it was like a 34-hour trip, something ridiculous all in all. And he was supposed to join me for 3 weeks, which I was super excited about, because right then and there I was on my own for quite a while. And it was in the west of China, and he lasted 6 hours on day number 1 before he was sent back to the UK due to a landslide that he couldn't overcome. And I gave him 2 clear options, both very tricky. And if you miss your footing, you're done. And there's no way around it. If you go around it, it'll add an extra week, and a week to a year already. It's about minimizing the time, not extending the time, just so that you can allow someone to join you for a little bit longer. And I gave him those 2 options. I said, look at option B, look at option A. I'm going to leave you for 10, 15 minutes. Get rid of all your ego, all of your pride. There's none of this out here. It's life and death. It's not winning or losing. And I want you to come back to me, because I don't know your capabilities or your abilities. And I need you to be upfront and honest and let me know if you feel comfortable and confident enough to overcome this landslide. And I left him. 10, 15 minutes went by, and he came back. And I was willing to go with whatever decision he made was the right decision. But I said, if you make the wrong decision and you decide to join me, and then halfway across this landslide, which is super steep and rocks are still falling, you can't then say, I need to turn back. It might be too tricky to turn back. So you need to give me a definite decision. And he did. And he says, I've not done this before. I'm not going to do it. I've got a wife and kid at home. It's not worth the risk. I was like, you're bang on. Let's get you back to this city. And I did, and we sent him back home. And it was then and there, I was like, yeah, that's kind of like me trying to dabble in his industry as a professional photographer.
It's more than dabbling, isn't it? Doing what he could have done is seriously dangerous.
Yeah.
And it's like, oof.
Yeah.
Oof.
And I saw it time and time again, and people were joining me and they were being evacuated. People were joining me and they were abandoned. People joined me knowing full well there are bears and wolves, yet there would be a local that said that, we saw a bear here only last night. Are you sure you want to camp here? And psychologically, that's enough to ruin them. That was it. They were done. Film crew gone. Left me with a horse. The horse was there to carry their kit, because we're at a section where you can't go by road. There's no
When people
tracks.
leave you, how does that make you feel? Does that kind of solidify your thoughts of feeling like, you are the wild man? Or do you feel a bit abandoned and you could have done with the support?
I think I'm really tested and challenged when that happens, because I feel uncomfortable when people leave me. Especially the west of China did something to me that other expeditions hadn't done before. It had made me feel vulnerable, even if I did have people with me. And I think it was the sense of the altitude, the isolation, and the wildlife. There was just something about going out there with a healthy mindset of, if you leave the bears alone, the bears will leave you alone. That Western mindset. And then the locals who deal with it every day say, you've got that wrong, mate. The bears, if they're hungry, they'll eat you. You're just on the, if they see you in the distance, if they're roaming down the valley and they see someone and they're hungry, you're on the menu. They want calories, and you're here at the wrong season, because I was delayed 2.5 months. And so by starting when I did, it meant that the bears were now slowly coming off the mountains, searching for extra food, extra calories before they go into torpor, which is their version of hibernation. And that meant that they were actively going into communities and they were killing people. And at first I was in disbelief, like the locals are telling me, but the locals could also be exaggerating. But they would back it up with photos and videos. Some videos I kept, some photos I deleted because the negative energy on my phone, it creeped me out.
Yeah.
It'd be like huts, families killed, a man, a big fella, mauled to death, and just his face, just from the picture, the scratch marks, he had been mauled, and I was just like, I can't have that on my phone. But some videos I did come back with and I did share. But it's when that happens, you just kind of like, oof, I don't like this. And then when team members ditch you, you feel it even more so. You know that there isn't safety in numbers anymore. And I remember just being loud, being present, making sure that if there's any bears, hopefully they hear me and will run away, if anything. Because a lot of the attacks happen where you stroll upon a bear, close proximity, and it panics because it's scared that it's just seen you, and then it will attack you.
Okay.
And so I was kind of like, what do I do? Do I make noise to make them, wary that I'm here, that my presence is here, and they might run away? Or is that also contradictory? Do they see me and they're like, oh, I'm hungry?
I'm hungry, yeah. Goodness me. And this is, you mentioned earlier, but the decision making.
Yeah.
You're making decisions
that you're not able to run by anyone. And I remember having my UK team and my Beijing team on the phone saying, abandon the trip. You've started too late in the season. You've had too many people evacuate. Start again next year. You'll learn more Mandarin. You'll become more fluent in Mandarin. You'll be better prepared. We'll get you the right team. We'll document everything, the year lead up. And at that point, thanks to Mongolia and Madagascar, I knew I had what it took. I knew my experience. I didn't need anyone at that point to tell me what I should and shouldn't do. I felt it. I was very much in tune. There was just a bit wary with the bears, not so much with the wolves. And I said, look, I will keep the team safe. And no one died on my watch. Everyone was fine. Everyone that was evacuated were evacuated safely. But I do remember saying that I will get us off the mountain before the true winter season. We face -20, but it drops to -40. And I'll avoid the bears. I'll avoid the wolves.
When is that cold? Can you notice a difference? Is there a level of cold where you're just cold now, like another -5, -10, not making a difference?
You can actually notice, yeah.
Okay.
You can notice the difference, and I remember noticing it from -10 to -20. At -20, it got to a point where I couldn't set up the tent by myself, and nor could my guide. We would have to take it in turns. It got that bad. He would have to spend like 60 seconds working before his hands were gone. And then he's worn it, and then I continue, and then he continues until it's up, and everything's like frozen as well. The tent work, even the poles, and the tent isn't as elasticated. So when you're trying to get it in that fast loophole, in that final loophole, it's too difficult, and you don't have the strength. And just cooking things and starting fire, it's very tricky.
What's the hardest bit? All these mad things you do. What is the hardest bit? What's the bit where you got, like in boxing, the hardest thing is losing weight. Boarding yourself down to that weight. The dehydration, when you talk about your lips being stuck together, I've been there. You obviously understand when you wake up in the morning and you use your tongue to touch the inside of your cheeks, it's gravel. It's just hard when you're that severely dehydrated.
Right, yeah.
And being tired and dehydrated and hungry and going out and training and sparring and getting hit in the head,
yeah.
and you're dehydrated, it hurts. Your legs wobble way more than you would do when you're fit. So
right.
For me, and I didn't really enjoy that. I never enjoyed losing weight. I enjoyed the discipline, and the sacrifice, and I enjoyed knowing the beast. I call it. You call it the wild man. I'm the beast.
Nice.
I have a beast inside me that comes out. I enjoy that, but some things I don't enjoy. I didn't enjoy about boxing. Although ultimately you do it to box, which I loved.
Yeah.
To perform on fight night. What bits in your challenges, your expedition, they sound unreal, and I'm here going, well, I want to go on one with you. A small one, maybe UK based.
Nice.
I desperately want to do one with you at some point. But what bits do you hate? Do you go, oh, fucking this bit's... Oh.
I think it's the magnitude of, for example, doing it every single day. Madagascar, for example, hunting and gathering, toenails falling off, bleeding out, from leeches, spiders.
Again, you're saying things, you're throwing things away. Toenails falling off.
Yeah.
Toenails falling off.
A
whole toenail just falling off.
Oh, multiple. Gone.
Mate.
So I think it's being restricted of all of the comfort time. So, you know, when people go out and they do like marathons in this country or that country, and sometimes they're either followed by a van which has the masseuse, or they'll have hotels where they can rest at. Picture a marathon a day, machete in hand. You've got to hunt your own food. You've got to climb trees and gather your own resources. You've got to maybe build your own shelter, build your own raft to get across the river. And then at night time, during the midst of a snow blizzard, a cyclone, or a desert storm, you are there in your tent whilst it's blowing a gale, sorting out your toenails, your blisters, your chapped lips. You're not eating that night. You can't start a fire. And then the next day, you've got to go again and again and again and again. And I think it's that lack of comfort, lack of team, lack of everything. You're just vulnerable to the elements, and it does what the fuck it wants to do. And it's just a case of how much will it break you until you pack it in.
You said at the beginning, imagine, boom, 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 boom. You said 12 things that people just can't imagine. I can't imagine losing a toenail. I can't. That's really bad.
Yeah.
And I know it's only a small thing amongst your whole thing, but losing a toenail for me would be really annoying because you put your socks on, your sock sticks to your toe, that stings.
Painful, man.
Yeah, and then you've got...
With all your blisters combined, you know, it's agony. And you've got blisters on your hand because you're hacking for 12 to 16 hours with a machete.
Yeah.
So your hand isn't even functioning, and then you try to start a fire, and it's just brutal.
So why do you do it? Is it something that you're running from? Is it something that you're running towards? Do you do this because it gives you a sense of significance? Do you do this because there's an easier way to earn a living? Yeah. And obviously. So why do you do it?
You know what? I think it started very organically and in a way accidental. I think it started with me wanting to test myself, see my capabilities, learn my own mindset and physical attributes, but also my love and passion for the world, for the people that live in there, that live in it. You know, the curiosity aspect, the wanting to travel and to explore new places. And I think another side is, if I want to go out and explore these places, do it the hard way. You know, if there's roads and cars and bikes, there's people, there's water, there's food, there's safety. In a way, they always say the world's a small place, right? And I disagree. I think the world's a big place. It's only ever small if you're on the usual tracks as everyone else. And so I guess for me, in my mind, the world's a big place, and it's a shame not to see it. You get this one life, and it's a shame not to see what you're capable of. And a life is full of lessons, and I think the hardest lessons or the greatest lessons you learn is also through adversity. And adversity isn't necessarily always a good thing, but I think what comes with the lowest lows is the highest highs. And so I think it's a mix of absolutely everything. And now I'm really starting to hit that point of my career where I don't have to risk my life as much, and the rewards are greater. You know, like this latest trip following the Great Wall of China, this was a huge budget, massive production, 6 one-hour international TV episodes. There was safety in numbers. There were over 20 film crew. I didn't risk my life once. I was looked after. It was still pretty mad in terms of the stuff that we were doing. Kung Fu in Shaolin Temple, scuba diving the Great Wall, helicopter above it, wrestling the Mongolians at Mongolian wrestling. You know, going to the Rainbow Mountains, camelback through the desert, you know, epic stuff. And I think that's where ultimately I've been trying to get it to. It's not that I've enjoyed risking my life, and especially at the times I hated it. It was only when I overcame it that I was like, fucking hell, I've learned so much about myself. And now my stories are going on to provide inspiration. And not only that, with the expeditions that I've done, what not a lot of people do know is with Mongolia, I actually raised funds for the Red Cross, but I was also raising awareness for climate change and the effects that it has on the nomadic way of life.
Wow, man.
With Madagascar, I was raising awareness, and I actually became ambassador for the country, for the tourism of Madagascar. And I raised awareness for the Lemur Network Conservation that has 60 organizations on the ground helping to protect and preserve all the unique biodiversity. 80% of all plant life and wildlife on the island is found nowhere else in the world. And then with the Yangtze, I partnered with the WWF, the World Wildlife Federation, you know? So I've always been trying to give back and help where I can, whether it's for humanitarian reasons, charity reasons, wildlife reasons. And again, even with Madagascar, taking a real negative of catching malaria, but overcoming it, clearing it fully out of my system, I then became ambassador for Malaria No More UK, and I was able to speak in Parliament addressing the UK government to increase their fund into the global fund by 20%, which is, as a joint effort, we succeeded, and that went to secure £1.2 billion that would help to save over 8 million lives and cases from malaria in the next 5 years.
Mate.
You know, so it's stuff like that is when I realised if I can do something, like would I go back and face malaria again? No. Would I go back and face malaria again? No. And I can be a voice for those who are unfortunate to be able to pay for the medication to clear out of their system. Yes, I fucking would.
I've got tingles running throughout my body right now. You ask my wife, she'll say I've got a massive ego. I've got a big ego, and I like me, and I'm proud of me.
Yeah, and I think you've got to have an ego to some extent also to get to where you're trying to get to and to get to where you've been and what you've achieved, you know?
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. And I like me. I back me. I think I am good. I think I'm a good person. I've done a lot in my life, and I think I'm a very, very good man, and I aspire to be a better man every single day. I'm trying every single day to grow and become bigger, better, stronger, emotionally, physically, spiritually. I sit in front of you, a very humbled man. I sit in front of you very inspired, and I'm looking at you thinking, I want to be more like you.
Oh, man.
And I don't say that to a lot of people. And mate, I think you are a tremendous, tremendous young man, 32 years old, that you've done so much already. Yet, as I mentioned, this is a passion of yours. I can tell. And our people watching this can see this glint in your eye that I can see, that Kat, the producer, can see, the smile on your face. You've already changed the world.
Appreciate that.
You're going to change the world in such a bigger way. You are half a lunatic to do the things you've done.
Yeah.
But yet you're so, so normal, and you're so relatable. You're a fantastic speaker. We spoke earlier. You've had no training. You just talk. You've done 3 TED Talks. Unbelievable. You're a great speaker. You're so likable. You're so relatable. I don't know if you fancy doing this in the future, but I think, wow, like, there's a future in politics for you. I mean, it doesn't matter whatever party you're with. I'm going to vote for you because you're a nice man. I believe you. I trust you. Mate, you're a lovely dude.
Mate, appreciate that.
Dude. Thank you,
brother.
I just want to say, man, like, I want to wrap this up now because we could be here for forever and a day, and I want people to listen to this and not be too overwhelmed.
We'll have to do a round 2, won't we?
100%, mate. Round 2 and a round 3 and a round 4.
And the rest. Just the beginning.
Where can people find you, follow you, research you, look more at you? And you know you've done the China show you've done recently. That'll be airing soon. What is next for Ash Dykes?
So, again, I'm on all social media accounts. Not Facebook anymore, as my account was disabled, believe it or not, for unknown reasons. But Instagram is Ash Dykes. YouTube, my book is Mission Possible.
Mission Possible.
Possible, yeah. And the next show, it should air either the end of this year or beginning of next. It will be released internationally. Mm-hmm. But again,
as of now, we don't know what TV network or anything is.
Yeah, as of right now, I can't announce dates or channels just yet. Okay. Hopefully on the next show, definitely. But again, you know, I've got lots of ideas. Some potential world firsts, others are just fantastic TV concepts. Yeah. And as soon as we've got this TV series off the ground, I'll be going straight to TV to get these next ones off the ground. But yeah, man, it's been long. A lot has been done. But again, you know, I feel now we're starting to make waves, create noise, and it feels like it's just the beginning for me.
But what one thing can you just like summarize with someone to go home and go, oh, that one thing, I'm going to try that one thing, I'm going to do that one thing, I'm going to believe in that one thing that we can take away from this episode?
Action. I think a lot of people can overthink, and a lot of people can overplan. I would say don't overstress, don't overplan, just start, you know, act. And I guess the hardest part when you act is keeping that motivation. But I learned a harsh lesson in the jungles of Madagascar, and it was when we were stuck, we were lost, and I didn't want to be there anymore, bleeding from everywhere. But I realized at that point, and I know this is a thing now, but I never really understood it until I experienced it, that no matter what you face in life, no matter what you're trying to achieve, you can't always be motivated. You can be disciplined. So when I was out there, hated it, lost all motivation, but I remained disciplined. So whatever you act upon, expect your motivation to disappear fully. It's about remaining disciplined. And another key fact as well, what set me off traveling in the first place, a quote that I always remember, is whatever you want to do now, get done now. And it was this quote that I came across: the biggest danger in life is not doing what you want to do now in the bet that you can buy yourself the freedom to do it later.
Wow, what a podcast from the lonely snow leopard. Ash Dykes, I salute you, sir. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast these last couple of weeks and sharing your unbelievable story. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you've learned something from this great man. There's so much there, so many nuggets of inspiration and hope. And what I love about Ash, like, he's able to make his story, which is so unrelatable, he can make it relatable for everyday people like you and I. So well done, Ash. Thank you so much. Next week, I've got my mate, Bayo Akinfenwa, the strongest footballer in the world, on the podcast with me, talking about his experiences when he played football in Lithuania. Before Bayo became a massive star on social media and in lower league football, Bayo played football in Lithuania and faced torrid abuse. And Bayo opens up about all those challenges, all the times he wanted to quit football because it got so much for him and he struggled to handle it. So, tune in next week. We're going to round up Black History Month here in the UK with Bayo Akinfenwa. And remember, when you're going through a tough time, always get back up. See you next week.